The color mixer in Adobe Camera Raw and Lightroom is a practical tool for us photographers, but it also includes the targeted adjustment function, and that takes the mystery out of color correction. This tool is made up of 8 different color sliders that we can switch from hue, saturation, and luminance. We can select any slider in any of those 3 options and we can adjust them manually. But my favourite part of the colour mixer is targeted adjustment. Now we do have colour correction tools in the basic tab, but there are times when targeting one colour in the colour mixer is both quick and easy. The sky in this shot is not a bad shade of blue, but that's not always the case. There have been a number of times that I have needed to adjust the hue, albeit only slightly. Remember, hue is a corrective tool, and therefore it requires a delicate approach. Now I'm going to select the targeted adjustment tool from the right hand side, and as I move on to the picture space you can see a slightly different looking cursor. Now for both saturation and luminance, this targeted adjustment I find perfect. Sometimes when I'm adjusting hue, it's a little bit too quick and I would rather go to the appropriate slider and just overtype the values on the right hand side or just move the slider. But even with the hue, I can click and drag one way or another and I can see over on the right hand side which slider is moving. So if I move a little bit further this way, if I found the sky was moving more towards that sort of turquoise, then I can move it to the right. But the amount we move it has to be quite delicate because we soon move into that mauvey colour or purple colour, and that's obviously too far. So you can see this is the one time where sometimes when we get a feel for our own camera and its colour bias, that we may even just overtype the value. So if I knew, for example, that most of the time +8 was a good setting for my camera, let's put the plus in there, then I can just overtype it or gently move that slider. Now I'd like to bypass the saturation tab just for a moment and move to the luminance, because in the luminance tab, and if we use the targeted adjustment, when I click you can see we can make the sky slightly darker or lighter. Well, I very much doubt we're going to want to make the sky lighter, but we may want to give it a little bit more impact by dragging to the left. And you can see over on the right hand side the sliders are moving as I click and drag. And do you notice that quite often when we click and drag on what we think is one colour, it's actually made up of more than one. And that's why the targeted adjustment I think is pretty good. Now I went to the luminance tab before I went to the saturation because I know that if I darken the image a little bit it does have an impact on the colour. But now we can select saturation, a quick look at the targeted adjustment, it's still selected. So now I can come onto the picture surface and I can click and we can see that we're going to take the image to the wrong direction to the left, but to the right we can put some rich colour into the sky, just with that click and drag. And of course while we're here we could notice other parts of our image that may also benefit from a little bit of saturation. Maybe the warmer tones under the wing of the bird, click and drag, and I can increase the saturation there just a little. Now with this image you can see I've got the targeted adjustment tool selected and also saturation, because what I could do here is click in the green areas and maybe take the saturation down a little bit. But I could click in the purple areas, click and drag to the right to put more impact in those leaves. With this shot we have another example where the saturation in the colour mixer with the targeted adjustment may be something we would want to use. Click and drag over the petals to punch up that yellow as far as we feel we ought to. And of course, if we feel the green is a little bit too competitive, we can click in the green areas and we can drag slightly the other way. So what we're doing here is just making that yellow pop a tiny bit more. The colour option that we find here in this drop down box is just another way to use these tools. They don't change what the colour mixer does. 5-minute fixes. Gradual learning is always the best.